Summer reading is here. Visit summerreading.queenslibrary.org for our full summer reading program schedule, book lists for all ages, and other resources to keep your kids engaged and learning all summer long. Queens Public Library, along with the New York City Department of Education, will be providing free lunches for all children under 18 throughout the summertime. Summer meals will be offered Monday to Friday from 1 to 2 p.m. through August 31st. Enrollment is not required and there is no cost. For more information and a list of participating libraries, visit queenslibrary.org. You can take QPL with you wherever you are. Our digital materials, including e-magazines, e-books, and more, are available 24/7 from anywhere with an internet connection. Download the QPL mobile app at connect.queenslibrary.org.
Welcome to Wellness Wednesdays. I'm Christopher Galarza, Queens Public Library's Community Health Educator. Today, we welcome Cherise Francis, who's an alchemist of the eye imagination and expresses herself through poetry, interdisciplinary arts, workshop facilitation, editing, and literary curation. Her work takes inspiration from her Afro-Caribbean heritage and studies in Afrofuturism and Black speculative arts, mythology, and etymology. Some of her work has been published in Furious Flower, Obsidian Lit, Rootwork Journal, Spoken Black Girl, in addition to many other publications. As the saying goes, the truth shall set you free. In this workshop series, we will read and discuss excerpts from essays and generate written work based on prompts inspired by the memoir anthology, You Are Your Best Thing, Vulnerability, Shame, Resilience, and the Black Experience, edited by Tarana Burke and Brene Brown. Based on the quotation from Toni Morrison's beloved, how can we see ourselves as our own best thing? How does living in a truth give us the breathing room, as Tarana Burke said, to be our full selves? In this year-long series, we will deep dive into various themes like vulnerability, family, healing, spirituality, social and institutional oppressions, art, and memory. Please welcome Cherise Francis.
Thank you, Christopher, and welcome to the You Are Your Best Thing series. In today's session, we'll be discussing Tarana Burke, who's one of the editors for the anthology, her letter, Where the Truth Rests. And so I want to get started with reading an excerpt from the beginning of her letter to herself. Where the Truth Rests. Dear Tarana, take a breath, dear heart. I know you. I don't want you to overwhelm yourself with what I am about to say, so I want you to stop, breathe, and relax, and keep coming back to this whenever you need to as we move forward. Agreed? Good. It has become increasingly popular to pen letters to our younger selves as a means of healing old wounds and prompting empathy and forgiveness for ourselves that we perhaps couldn't muster at the onset of our trauma. I've employed this practice myself in my work over the years, but I'm going to take a chance and go in a different direction this time by writing to us in the future. I don't know when exactly. This may just be a salve one day when we need it more than any previous day, or it may be a routine elixir that we pull out often to beat back that all-consuming tidal wave that makes us feel disease. These are our words to use how we see fit. We are sick. I just need to get this out first because I know how it makes you feel to hear it or read it. You will want to buck at this characterization or dissect and explain, but I need you to sit with it for a moment. No one is here but us. No one can hear you. No one is judging you. That word sick alone won't kill you. But you have to know in this moment, as I am sending you these words, we are in danger of spilling out of the container that we have spent so much time carefully building for ourselves. Stop there for a moment and we'll continue reading a little bit more later. But I want to focus on the title of this letter, Where the Truth Rests, and what Tarana Burke says about being sick and being honest with herself about being sick. And in thinking about this section of her letter, it reminds me of this quote from Audre Lorde. Caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. Now, what is self-indulgence? Self-indulgence is defined as an excessive kind of consuming that is often used to mask feelings of emptiness or feelings of insecurity. And we'll discuss a little bit later when we talk about shame and masking, how that relates to self-indulgence. But true caring for oneself is related to self-preservation. And self-preservation is acknowledging your needs for your own survival, acknowledging what you need that will truly nourish you and help in your continued health and wellness. And that's something important to keep in mind, especially in the culture that we live now, where wellness has been commodified and has been sold as this idea of consuming products. That true wellness isn't about consuming, it's about acknowledging what you actually need and letting that guide you towards actual true health. So in thinking about truth and honesty, I wanted to reference a study called The Science of Honesty and How It Relates to Wellness. A scientist named Anita E. Kelly, Dr. Anita E. Kelly, looked at how health is related to truth-telling and how that can improve one's mental and physical health. She invited participants over the course of 5 weeks to consistently tell the truth instead of lying. And over the course of those 5 weeks, the participants responded that they had fewer sore throats, headaches, and nausea. And they also reported having fewer mental health complaints like feeling tense or anxiety. So in thinking about honesty and truth-telling, I wanted to go a little deeper and why honesty is important. And I was watching a video from Kimberly Foster from For Harriet, and she was talking about her managing her ADHD. And she mentioned the importance of identification, seeking help, and making change. And so I believe truth-telling and honesty is a form of identification. And identification is about true recognition of yourself in the current moment. Of course, who you are can change from moment to moment, but knowing who you are at the moment that you're dealing with whatever you're dealing with can help you make the right changes in your life. And then seeking help can include seeking information, seeking knowledge about what you need, and about fulfilling what you need. And of course, having a sense of agency, which is where true empowerment comes from, is about knowing the steps you need to make changes in your life. So thinking further about honesty, another YouTuber named Lip Gloss talked about the importance of recognizing our authentic self and giving attention to our authentic self. In the beginning of the introduction from the anthology, Tarana Burke mentions the importance of us having breathing room for our humanity, having breathing room so we can just rest and just be who we are without feeling like we have to conform to another's idea of what we should be. And in the YouTube video I watched from Lip Gloss, she talked about the anxiety of having to be our natural selves in the world, because so much of society tells us that to love ourselves as we are is not something good, because they're actually invested in us not loving ourselves, that their power and their wealth comes from us feeling insecure, feeling that we have to hide our natural selves continuously. And so Lip Gloss emphasized that we need courage to act and make changes in our lives that really give attention to our authentic selves. And then also we need to recognize the true root causes of our mental agony, our physical health problems, that it's often not just our own actions, it's also institutional and social roots of our issues. And oftentimes, because we think it's just on us, because we live in a society that's very individualistic when it comes to wellness, we often end up being harder on ourselves, and we don't show ourselves enough self-love and self-compassion, and that increases our health issues as well. So when we think of honesty isn't just about acknowledging the ways that we feel ill, but also recognizing the roots of those illness in social systems and social structures that cause dysfunctions within our body, and forces us to detach from our true feelings and forces us to detach from our authentic selves. And I wanted to mention this quote from The School of Life, and I'll share the video later on from where that came from, that illness is the midwife of truth. Illness is basically a warning signal and alerts us that something is wrong. And it forces our bodies to search for truth and actual true health. So the first prompt that I'll give you a few minutes to think about is, what is a past and or current truth about yourself and your social environment that you need to face? I'll give you a couple of minutes to write down a few notes for yourself. So let's move on to the second part of Tarana Burke's title, Where the Truth Rests, and think about more about what is rest. So, in referencing Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith, she talked about 7 types of rest: physical rest, mental rest, sensory rest, creative rest, emotional rest, social rest, and spiritual rest. Physical rest has to do with what we think about as sleep, naps, doing stretches in the morning, doing exercises like yoga, having a massage. It's the most typical kind of rest that we tend to think about. But the other types of rest are also important for our bodies because those types of rest also impact our physical health as well. So in mental rest, if you have, for example, a heavy workload where you're constantly having to absorb new information, it's important to regularly take rest from that to give your mind a chance to process through all that information. With sensory rest, we live in a digital age. We're constantly on our computers and on our phones, and that also creates sensory overload. And so it's good to sometimes take a break from being on our computers or our phones and letting our bodies rebalance ourselves so we can have more energy to deal with the constant stimuli that is in our lives. Creative rest. Oftentimes we think things like creative blocks are from us having nothing going on in our minds, when in actuality, it might be that we have a lot going on in our minds and we need time for our brains to process through all that information and be able to actually use that information to be creative. So it's important sometimes when you have a creative block to actually take a break and then come back and see what has come out of that break. Emotional rest, of course. If you're dealing with a relationship where there's a lot of issues going on, where you're not communicating properly, it might be important, and this is related to the idea of honesty and truth telling, where you're honest about each other's needs instead of putting up a pretense, where you're both pretending that things are fine when they're not. So back to the idea of honesty as a form of rest as well. And when we think about social rest, I'm an introvert, so being around people a lot can exhaust me. So needing a break from being in social environments is good for my health. But also we can think of it in relation to social unrest, where we think of oppressive systems, oppressive cultures that make it hard for one to exist within a society. So social rest can include creating social change that make it that creates better health outcomes for us. And last, we have spiritual rest, where we have deep connections with other people, and that gives us a sense of purpose throughout our lives and makes us want to continue living our lives as well. So I want to take a moment for us to think about what types of rest do you need now, especially in this moment, and reflecting back on the first question about thinking about truths that you need to confront for yourself and truths about the social environment in which you're in right now. Okay, so let us return to Tarana Burke's letter and continue reading. And trigger warning for anyone who has anxiety. She'll be talking a lot about her experience with anxiety as well. There is no blame here. We were just trying to survive. The container started to show signs that it would not always hold up that day in the church. We messed up the liturgy in front of the whole school, and we were hurt and embarrassed. But our brain had already taught us to turn that into anxiety and shame. That same cycle has repeated over and over so many times in our life that we almost don't know how to function without them. Almost. I know you recall the first time we heard the word anxiety related to our behavior. We were around 22 riding back to Selma from Birmingham with girlfriends. I still don't know where it came from, but out of nowhere, one of our episodes started. We had come up with this name to describe the tightening in our chests, labored breathing, and dizzy feeling that sometimes snuck up on us. Normally, it was like that movie, The Blob, where an amorphous, icky feeling slowly took hold of us and wouldn't relent. It sometimes started in our feet and made our legs feel like jelly as it crept up past our knees to our thighs. Other times it attacked from our stomachs and spread both ways like a giant burst. But we were masters. We had gotten so good at removing ourselves from people as soon as the first feeling hit that I bet if we could have watched ourselves, it would have been like seeing a master illusionist at work. That day in the car was different. We had nowhere to go and we couldn't hide. And so we had to feel all of our feelings in front of folks for the first time. One of our girlfriends opened the window to make sure we're getting fresh air while the other put her arm around us and talked us through steadying our breathing. She kept us cradled in her arms until our breathing normalized and the car stopped spinning. When they asked us if we were all right, we said it was just a thing that happens sometimes when we have been in a car for too long, but thankfully our girlfriend knew better. She said very carefully, "I think you had an anxiety attack." She then described what they were and the possible causes, and we nodded and smiled, but even listening to her turn our episodes into a concrete thing with a name was causing us more anxiety. We probably made a joke to brush it off and change the subject. We do that a lot. Do you still do that? We promised that day that we would talk to our doctor about it, but we didn't. We found space in the container and tucked that episode away with everything else. This pattern went on for far longer than we ever want to admit. Tarana, but you remember what happened when we were forced to pay attention. It was during Hurricane Katrina. We had been working for 3 days straight, setting up the temporary shelter with our folks and trying to locate our family and friends who had gotten caught in the storm down in New Orleans. We would get up in the morning and go to the Red Cross to check in for new people needing lodging and then go across the river to our community center, which had been transformed into a holding center for donations. We'd work there for a few hours and then drive 23 miles round trip bringing stuff to the campsite that was now a shelter. We were exhausted. The work itself was keeping us calm, or so we thought, but it was just holding us together. Nothing going on inside of us was calm because our heart was heavy, waiting on news about if our folks had survived or not. Finally, on the third day, we got a call. In so many ways, that call changed our lives. Someone put a cell phone into our hand while screaming and crying out, "It's Uncle Ted." We grabbed the phone and tried to hold our composure while listening to him rattle off scattered details. The tears were falling hard to the point of blurring our vision. We handed the phone back and attempted to pull ourselves together, but our head was spinning. Before we could make a move, our weight shifted and we grabbed onto the window of the minivan we were leaning on. "Are you okay?" We would hear someone ask. but we were paralyzed, or at least it felt that way, and then we blacked out. When we came to, we acted awful. People were fussing over us, and we started cussing and screaming for them to get off of us, and we went and sat in the building for a moment. After drinking water and sitting still for maybe 10 minutes, we emerged from the building and shot daggers at anyone who asked what happened. We moved on as if it were nothing, and it was such a busy time that no one followed up or asked any more questions. I wish they would have. I wish someone would have pushed us to explain why we were acting so irrational when people were just offering help. I wish someone would have seen through that hard as nails exterior to help us see that we had just experienced something we had never quite felt before, a tear in the scene. It was so scary to us because we were not supposed to be this person. The container was supposed to hold. We were not crazy, we were strong. We never ever felt apart in public. In fact, we went to great lengths to be even keeled in most situations. The only emotions we wielded freely were our versions of happiness and anger. Fear, panic, sadness, vulnerability, and the likewise were off limits. We had heard our mother say enough times how she hated when women cried in public to know better than to let ourselves get caught in that weak woman web. The need to manage the array of emotions that visited us on a regular basis was predicated on our need to be strong at all times. Strong women are collected. They are sharp and aware and impervious. That moment at the car as we were covered and folks were fussing over us, we felt overwhelmed and scared. But more than anything, we felt betrayed by our brain. We had done so much work to neatly pack so much stuff away, and in one moment it seemed to have all come undone. That's where we are today, undone. I know you want to know why I'm dredging up all of these memories that we work so hard to keep just out of our periphery, but I have to. I am worried about us. Therapy got us out of the darkest places, and I'm grateful for that. The books we read and the people we have talked to have helped us master the language of healing and healthy, but we know what's true. Breathe. Let your heart collect itself. We aren't in any danger right now. What's true is that we still grind our teeth in our sleep 3 decades after a dentist first told us that it could be a problem. Now it's a problem. We paid handsomely to fix the problem, but how long did we wear the mouth guard? The moment the dentist said it was necessary, our first thought was, I'm not doing that. We are so stubborn. The first doctor we trusted with a few of our secrets was Dr. Pina, our obstetrician. We were most committed to our mental and physical health when we were pregnant. We told him all about the manifestations of stress and anxiety in our lives and how they most affected our sleep. Night terrors, teeth grinding, sleepwalking, talking in our sleep, and of course, insomnia. He is the one who first told us the body and mind are connected and suggested a therapist. We stared at the phone number he gave us for a long time until the piece of paper it was on became a grocery list or scratch pad or something. We made a bold promise that we should prioritize dealing with these issues so that we didn't pass them down to our baby. That didn't happen. Right now, we have learned that we have 5 cavities. After a lifetime of none, we now have a mouthful because we have ground down the ridges that protect our teeth. We have damaged our gums and our jawbone from the biting down so hard. We were mortified as the dentist gently explained the condition of our mouth to us and asked us, are you stressed? Are we stressed still? We wrote an essay called Death to the Strong Black Woman. It was one of our first published pieces, and we were so worried about it that we stayed up until the wee hours of the morning to make edits and more edits. When the editor asked us if we could add another piece about love and relationships, we agreed, though we were already exhausted. We got that second piece done in one night because we were determined to be excellent. I don't know how we missed the connection between strength and excellent. Do you get it now? I know you probably still call yourself a freedom fighter, but I wonder if you have mapped out a path to your own liberation. Black excellence Strong Black Women, Think a Black Woman, Black Girl Magic. They are all about our labor, not our liberation. We will die on the vine for them if we don't stop and realize that we are sick. I'll stop there and return later on. But in thinking about this selection from the letter, Tarana talks about her own anxiety and how she constantly tries to mask that anxiety, and not just within herself, but because of social pressure as well to mask that anxiety. As she talks about the stereotype of the strong Black woman, where Black women and Black femmes are often seen as being able to hold it all together and being resilient in the face of a lot of trauma and societal oppression. The truth of the matter is that kind of stereotype puts a lot of pressure on Black women and Black femmes, and they aren't able to express their true feelings, their feelings of their true vulnerability, their feelings of actually feeling weak or stressed, and hiding that also affects their health. So, in thinking about this excerpt, I wanted to talk more about shame. And shame is defined as a painful emotion caused by consciousness of guilt, shortcoming, or impropriety. It's also a condition of humiliating disgrace or disrepute, and something that brings censure or reproach. And I wanted to add on that shame can come from being perceived as wrong or as an inconvenience for being different to what has been deemed as normal. Of course, things like being harmful or hurtful to others is something that should not be tolerated and should be shamed in a sense. But oftentimes, shame is forced upon people who are the most marginalized in society because they're seen as being deviant from what is considered normal. And normal is something that is constructed by those who have privilege and are in power. And shame, this kind of negative punishment that is put on people, does not actually solve problems. It does not help people learn how to be better people. It often forces people to do things in secret or in a dangerous way. And what's better is to help people manage who they are and engage them and understand who they are and deeply listen to them so they can help be who their authentic selves in a way that is safe and healthy for them. And I wanted to bring up two terms that is often mentioned when we think about shame, is masking and posturing. Masking is a term that's often used in neurodivergent communities. It's a process by which an individual changes or masks their natural personality to conform to social pressures, abuse, or harassment. And those social pressures are usually from people who are considered neurotypical. But it's not just for neurodivergent people. I think every day we do that kind of process of masking ourselves, where we hide our true selves because we fear rejection, we fear loneliness, we fear people won't accept the real us as we are. And that kind of masking is exhausting, to always hold up that kind of fake image of who you are so you'll be accepted. And you end up feeling very alone and disconnected from the world when you have to pretend to be something you're not. And I also wanted to bring up posturing, which can be related to affectation and pandering, where it's related to masking, where you behave in a certain way so you seem more appealing to people, or you mislead people in a sense of you're lying so you can get things out of other people or appeal to people, so you seem a certain way. And that is harmful as well, because you're essentially lying to other people and you're not having deep, true connections with other people. And I relate this to there's been talk around about the false idea of confidence, that confidence is, in a sense, like posturing or masking, where you're not showing your real self, you're putting on this facade that everything is okay, kind of in the same way that Tarana Burke talks about in her letter, where she tries to act like she's okay and she's doing well, when in actuality she's falling apart. And so, in thinking about these three terms, I would like you to think about naming three examples in which you've had to hide your true self to fit into what is considered normal or expected of you. And I'll give you a couple of minutes to think about that. Okay, so let us read the ending of Burke's letter. This was after she had a stroke. Because of the constant need to hide her anxiety, it eventually affected her health to the point that she ended up having a stroke. So we had our usual meetings and Zoom calls and a full agenda, but we were exhausted by midday. It was a different kind of exhaustion, though, extremely low energy and spirits. By early evening, we did the thing we always threatened to do. We laid down for a nap. An hour later, panic woke us up. Our body felt as though we had been in a fight and our right side couldn't move. We managed to call out to Kaya, who called our fiance into the room. But I wanted to back up for a moment and recall with you the moment right before they entered the room. We were lying still on the bed, muffling our cries. Every attempt to lift our arm or roll to our side failed, and each try made our heart race faster. After a second try, we thought about calling out, but instead closed our eyes and attempted to calm down. It is the method we had been using for years during anxiety attacks and those dizzy spells we had decided were vertigo when no doctor could or would explain them. It wasn't working. The tears were coming faster and we were scared. We still didn't call out. We lay there for minutes, what could have been precious minutes, thinking. We had one burning question at the moment. What will be exposed if I let this play out? Then our mind was off to the races. What if this was low iron? We thought about how we let our diet go so badly that we had gained at least 20 pounds. What if it was some major anxiety attack? Would they have to medicate me? What if it was that secret compulsion I had? Would the world dismiss me as crazy? What about all the work I had done and still had to do? What happens to that if I let this happen? We didn't even know what this was, but it was different from anything we had felt before. We couldn't calm it down or get our head around it at all, and so we finally called out. An overnight hospital stay, CT scans, MRIs, EKGs, and several blood tests later, we found out that it was diagnosed as a transient ischemic attack, or a mild stroke caused by stress, was actually a condition, complex migraines. Just like the sleep issues, skin issues, stomach issues, hair issues, and dental issues before it, the diagnosis was still stress and anxiety. I'm writing to you right now because if you haven't changed by now, I'm afraid of what else might have happened, have added to the list. And if you have changed only a bit, I'm afraid that this unraveling will only pick up pace if the change isn't drastic. Remember what our neurologist said. We picked her specifically because she was a Black woman and the best in her field, and because we knew she would tell us the truth. And she did. Her exact words: if you want to live, you need to make a drastic change in your life. Drastic? Has that happened? Have you at least told someone else the truth? The container is beyond capacity, and we clearly can't hold all of this truth on our own. We will succumb to it if we try. The truth always needs a resting place, or it will lie down wherever it sees fit. I'm not trying to guilt you. I know guilt causes us more stress. I'm trying to love on you, love on us. It's so hard for me to do in the present, but I love what our future holds, and I love you, and I want it all for you. You deserve it. We have said these words to many Black girls over the years, but now I want to say them to you. You deserve safety, you deserve protection, you deserve love, you deserve peace. Breathe, beloved. Let's do it together right now. Breathe in what I'm saying. Breathe out what you are thinking. We tell the world they don't have to be anything but themselves to be worthy, and then we work until the stress is about to kill us to prove our worth. It is not just you, it is the paradox of deeply melanated women. But right now, I need you to hear me, because if we are still alive, then there is hope to beat this thing. I will do my part from where I am. That's the commitment I will make to you. I'm going to start by releasing my fear of the container and beginning to clear it out carefully. I will rest where the truth rests, and I won't do it in silence or in secret, I promise. And by the way, if you have done this work already and figured out how to save us, then I just want to say thank you. I knew we could do it. With all my love, Tarana. So in thinking about the ending of the letter, I want to leave you with 3 questions so you can write a future letter to yourself. What steps do you need to begin to map a path to your own liberation? And as a reminder, Tarana said there's a difference between liberation and labor. Labor is often about having to prove your worth, and it's connected to what Audre Lorde said about self-indulgence, that you are constantly kind of consuming this idea of labor and thinking, if I just keep doing more and more and more, that'll prove my worth, when all it does is exhaust you. And liberation is about truly taking care of yourself and your own self-preservation so that you can keep living your life in a healthy and safe way for yourself. So what steps do you need to begin to map a path to your own liberation? And then, as we read, Tarana goes through all the fears in her head when she was having a stroke, and she asks herself a series of questions. And so I would like for you all to also think about, what fears do you need to acknowledge and let go of in order for you to start making those steps towards your true wellness? And last, what is a promise you would like to make to your future self? Tarana ends the letter with a promise to herself, and says that this is not about shaming. This is about her showing true compassion and love for herself because she wants to see herself make it to the future. So, what is a promise that you would like to make to your future self? And so, I will give you a few minutes to write a few responses to these 3 questions. And then I will give you a few additional resources to help continue the conversation for yourself about health, wellness, honesty, and rest. So you feel free to continue writing on your own, but I just want to leave you with a few resources that I've collected together to continue thinking about these topics on your own. Um, you've probably heard of the Nap Ministry by Tricia Hershey, who connects the importance of rest to social change. She also does meditation. She has one called Rest Life that is very good. Um, as I mentioned before, with masking and posturing, I wanted to mention this YouTube video from Mina Lay called Confidence is a Cult. And as I mentioned before, with the School of Life, the importance of a breakdown and the upsides of having a mental breakdown. And this goes back to illness as a step towards truth and actual true health. And I want to leave you with sound meditations from Bianca Mona, and she also recently curated a journal issue for Culture Push and has embodied healing resources there as well. So I would like to end it here. I hope this was inspiring for you to think about the importance of truth telling and rest for your own life. And I will leave the space open for if anyone in the audience has questions.
Thank you so much, Cherise. And I really want to, let everyone know if you feel comfortable, definitely you could share some things, and because there was a lot of stuff that, Sharice covered and a lot of important things. And one of the things that I really, took away from was like this idea of this inner locus of control, right? Everything that happens to you is your fault,
Mm-hmm.
and you are your sole determination in whether you're healthy or not.
Mm-hmm.
It's this ahistorical, decontextualized truth, right? You are not just one person existing. You are a person existing within a structure,
Right.
existing within a society, and so often it's, well, you're a person who does unhealthy things and that's why you're unhealthy. But
Mm-hmm.
we really don't understand why are these unhealthy behaviors existing, what's going on. And I think that's something that we all, as you said, as Tarana said, we need to take that moment and say, hold up, why am I stressed?
Mm-hmm.
What is going on here? And I think that's such an important thing, that we need to take every day, and that in the idea of that, of the different rests, and checking in each day and say, well, what kind of rest do I need? So often everyone's like, oh, you feel tired, go to bed. But a lot of times we're tired, but we're not physically tired. We're
Mm-hmm.
we're sensory, mental, emotional. So I thought that was, thank you for speaking about that. And I wonder if you have any more thoughts surrounding some of those things, and um, what our viewers think about some of those things that were raised.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Reading that letter from Tarana Burke was really important for me because I could relate to it as someone who I feel like a lot of people see me as the strong friend, right?
Mm.
As the person who always has it together, as the person who always seems confident. But in actuality, I'm always dealing with anxious feelings and feeling doubtful for myself. And I've been learning within the past few years to be more honest with myself about those feelings, to learn to just say when I'm not feeling well or I'm feeling stressed, because I do often look like the type of person who has it all together. And I'm learning that I have to vocalize it more so people understand how to care for me and how to help me. And I want to stress the importance of, at least for yourself, even if others around you don't want to acknowledge that, at least for yourself, so you can move towards your needs and fulfilling your needs for yourself, to be honest with yourself and honest with your feelings.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. And we also have to, think about, there's also different layers to that, right? There's these lower order things that we absolutely need. Housing, food, water, and then there's these other things that, are often relegated to, okay, once we have our base needs met, then we can work on these other things. And, unfortunately, a lot of people aren't able to work on those other things. And that's part of that whole context that you were speaking about, of there's these outside factors that are often not acknowledged, and these outside factors that are kind of like, well, you just have to work with it. And I was able to do it. How come you're unable to do it? And that's unfair. That's a value judgment. We're all just people living and trying to do the best that we can. There shouldn't be this idea of bad bodies or unhealthy bodies and unhealthy things. It's, I'm a human being that's doing the best that I can every day. And sometimes there's a lot going on with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do want to emphasize that you're doing the best that you can, because so much of our culture relies on this kind of bootstrap mythology where it's like, oh, just get your life together, do this and do that. And people who say that often come from a place of privilege where they have what they need to thrive in a certain way. And they don't consider that um, somebody might be having a hard time finding a place to stay, or a hard time paying bills, or just dealing with mental issues that make it hard for them to do what they need to do to continue living in what is considered a normal way, right? Like, you don't know what somebody is going through that keeps them from doing what you do. So having more empathy and compassion for other people is important. And I think that empathy and compassion for others is what leads to social change.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, we also have to think about things that are taught to us and almost like engendered into our bodies and into our thoughts. As Brenda is saying, how women are taught that self care is self indulgence, right? When those are two very separate things.
Mhm.
Taking care of yourself is not indulgent, it's taking care of yourself, and the idea that if, and I feel that this is very, put on mothers also, that
Mhm.
a mother who needs time by herself to do what she needs to do, oh, there's all this value judgment over it. But we all need our own time. We all
Mhm.
need our own space. We all need that time to do what we need to do to restore ourselves. A
Mhm.
battery can't keep going unless you recharge it. And
Mhm.
we all, just like batteries, we need to recharge ourselves.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's a very interesting thing. And one thing that we speak about in public health is it's called an allostatic load. And basically what that is the level of stress that you have to deal with, right? So if you think about it, stress is basically like this weight that gets put on you.
Mhm.
And some people have higher allostatic loads than other people, and traditionally those who come from marginalized communities that are often have less resources, they have a higher allostatic load. So for them to get through their day, they have to carry this 50-pound backpack just
Mhm.
to get through the day, while someone else may be only carrying a 5-pound backpack. Of
Mhm.
course, they're going to be more tired and going to need more things to take care of themselves. And
Mhm.
a lot of times we don't acknowledge that other people have, heavier backpacks than us.
Mhm. Yeah, and it goes back to how we think about mental illness and mental health as well, because we tend to, like I mentioned before about the types of rest, like we tend to emphasize the physical aspects because it's more of what is most visibly seen. But like the rest of our body, our mental, our emotional, our spiritual, all of that also affects our physical as well. Our brain, our mind is part of our body. And so if we're stressed out in mental and emotional ways, we're stressed out socially, all of that is impacting our physical health as well.
Definitely, yeah. There no longer is this separation of mind and body. We used to think they were two different things. You know, Now we really need to think about, no, they're one, right? Your mind is part of your body. It is one thing, and so if your body is out of whack, then your mental health is going to be out of whack. If your mental health is out of whack, your body's going to be out of whack. And we really need to be working in tandem with all of these things that make us whole, make us human to achieve health and wellness.
Mhm.
So thank you so much for presenting today, Cherise. We're so excited to keep going for the week, for the year, I should say. We're going to see you again next month and every month after that. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we look forward to having you at our next Wellness Wednesday. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.